Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Facebook Live. It's great to see everybody today. And as always, my name is Laura Betts, and I am the Oxygen Lady, and I talk about holistic health and hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And our facility here in Fort Lauderdale is the first holistic hyperbaric center of its kind. And it's great to see you all again while we get into tonight's topic. So what are we talking about today? Let's see where we are at. Let me get over here. Okay. So tonight we want to talk a little bit about air is not the same as oxygen. And I am inspired today by one of the calls that came in, and it was wonderful to be able to help this person. And as we were doing the intake today, we found out that they had done what they thought was hyperbaric oxygen therapy at another site. But we didn't quite understand, if they had done so much hyperbaric oxygen therapy, why they were at such a significant decline in their outcome. Not only weren't they making any progress, but they were backsliding, and they're backsliding very quickly. And as hyperbaric medical professionals, we see oxygen miracles here at our clinic every day. So it was really surprising, and we needed to dig a little deeper there and get some more information. And what we came to find out, which unfortunately is more common than not, is that they didn't do any hyperbaric oxygen therapy. The O in the HBOT is representative of oxygen, and that means something. Air and oxygen are not the same thing. And as somebody who grew up scuba diving, it was very common for them to talk about the scuba tanks in the movie as oxygen tanks. And I remember as a little girl, my father correcting that, because they're not using oxygen. Those are not oxygen tanks. But it's a common misconception. And what I'd like to do is give some information and dispel that myth tonight. So again, thank you so much for joining me this evening. And as always, we do Facebook Lives every Monday. And for those of you that are listening on the line, again, I am founder and facility director of Hyperbarics RX down here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And my personal story about how I founded the clinic and my own healing experience with hyperbaric oxygen therapy is one of our other videos. So I encourage you to go ahead and check it out. We are located at 3701 West Commercial Boulevard in Fort Lauderdale, but we do also do consulting and telehealth all over the world. And we, again, have a ton of videos and topics under our section. So I encourage you to go ahead and look. There's so many information there, and there are some expansions. They're little pieces and modules that put together and build off of each other. Last topics, we talked about fatigue after hyperbaric oxygen therapy. So if you have done hyperbaric oxygen therapy and you were exceptionally tired, unnaturally tired after the therapy, that's something you want to bring to our attention. That's something you want to bring to your professionals that you're working with. If you're home treating, self-treating, you need to reach out to us and get some consulting, because there are some different things that are happening there, and we're not taking the best opportunity. We're not creating the best opportunity for efficacy, and we're not fully benefiting from the hyperbaric. We also did another topic. Our prior topic to that was bacteriostatic versus bactericidal, and I dug a little deeper on hyperbaric dosages there. Again, in the world of hyperbaric, we are a training and research site. So we're very sensitive to dosages. We're very sensitive to all of these different switches, these different trigger points in the body. And this, by the way, is another reason why you want to be working with an ANDI certified hyperbaric facility. There is some really differences there. And one of the things that you can count on is that the O in the HBOT and an ANDI certified hyperbaric facility is oxygen. We're using proper dosages, we're doing clinical dosages, and we're personalizing the dosage, the dive plan, based on the outcome. Not all hyperbaric protocols are treated exactly the same. There can be differences in dosage, the amount of oxygen being dissolved into our body. There can be differences in duration, how long the hyperbaric session is. There can be differences in series, how many sessions. Some blocks are 5, some are 10, some are 6, some are 40. And then there can also be frequency. Are we doing it once a week, twice a week, 5 days a week? Do we need to do it every day without any breaks? All of this is part of the equation there. And it's another reason to choose Andy certified hyperbaric facility. And then, of course, we're doing something a little different. We are the first and only holistic hyperbaric center of its kind. And we're utilizing a unique combination of modalities and essentially to create an optimal opportunity for efficacy. And we get results. And if you're struggling, we'd love to help you. So please reach out to us and schedule a consultation, and we'll get you right on a roadmap to health. So let's dig deep into our tonight's topic now. Now, the term air and the term oxygen, these terms are used interchangeably, and that's a mistake. Breathing air affects our body quite differently than breathing oxygen. And while we are breathing air right now, air is a mixture of gases, and it does contain a relatively small amount of oxygen. So, filling a hyperbaric chamber and delivering air through the built in breathing system, or not using any built in breathing system at all to the patient, to the chamber occupant, biophysically, it's very, very different. Now, air is a gas mixture, air is not 100% oxygen. Air contains oxygen. Oxygen is a unique gas unto itself, and it's got its own rules. It has its own pathophysiology, the way it acts in the body, and as does nitrogen and trace gases as well. Now, oxygen does good things for us. Oxygen is very important to human physiology. We have about 6,000 expressions going on in our body every second that are just based on oxygen mechanisms alone. And when the cells don't have enough oxygen, essentially the root of all disease is some kind of lack of oxygen, some kind of mitochondria damage. And when we properly supply oxygen to the body safely and effectively with hyperbaric oxygen therapy, we have all of these different mechanisms of action, switches that go on in the body. But those switches, those chemical reactions, they are oxygen dependent. They're not nitrogen dependent, and they're not based on trace gases. So again, making the point that while these terms are used interchangeably, they are very, very different biophysically. Now, again, just to clarify, oxygen in HBOT is different than air. Air is a gas mixture. Again, the numbers down there on the bottom of the screen for you that contains a certain amount of oxygen, but it is not exclusively oxygen. Now, the classification for what we're supposed to be using here, there is actually a very specific number. In the United States, this is United States pharmacopoeia grade. So when you're purchasing medical grade bottles of oxygen, when you're purchasing a medical grade concentrator, the standard that this is designed to meet is called USP. And USP needs to be a minimum of 93% FO2. FO2 stands for the fractional equivalent of oxygen in the breathing mixture. So 93% minimum FO2. Now, this is very specific because if we're using less than 93%, technically it's not USP. By the definition, the medical definition of what is medical breathing oxygen, less than 93% isn't it. It's a mixture. It may be therapeutic, but we're not talking about a mixture. We're not talking about air. We're not talking about anything other than oxygen. Now, oxygen itself can come from medical cylinders. They're commonly called tanks, but they're really, the proper term is cylinders, or it can come from medical grade oxygen concentrators. And in most cases, a built-in breathing system, some kind of mask is required. If the chamber is filled with air, then some kind of mask, some kind of hood, some kind of regulator, some kind of built-in breathing system is required. Otherwise, you're just breathing air. And nitrogen, while it is biochemically inert, it is not biophysically inert. Treating with oxygen is very different than treating with nitrogen. And in an earlier topic a few weeks ago, I talked about the bactericidal mechanisms of oxygen. And those bactericidal mechanisms are very important. And it is part of one of the things that hyperbaric oxygen therapy does so well. But here's the issue. Nitrogen does not have that bactericidal mechanism. In fact, nitrogen, it blooms the bugs. Most of the bad guys are what we call anaerobic, which means they don't like oxygen. So that's part of the reason why hyperbaric oxygen is so effective for the immune system. It's part of the reason why antibiotic-resistant infections respond to hyperbaric oxygen therapy. If you have been struggling, or you know someone who has been struggling with an infection, if they are failing courses of antibiotics, if they've tried everything, they haven't tried a proper course of clinical hyperbaric oxygen therapy at proper bactericidal dosages. It always works. The only question is, how many sessions do they need, and what is the series and frequency? That's the only piece. All of this stuff really, really hates the oxygen, and that's one of the reasons why it's used currently in hospitals for some of these very aggressive, very nasty infections. But here's the problem. Air and oxygen is not the same thing. Again, air has 21% oxygen and 78% nitrogen. Now, I've done some math in some other videos, but basically, you are loading more nitrogen into the body when treating with air than oxygen. It creates a low oxygen environment and it blooms the bugs. And this is becoming a huge issue because in many cases, the systems are not capable of delivering a bactericidal dosage. They're using terms interchangeably. Hyperbaric is very dosage dependent. I've done some videos on that. And when chronic factors are present, such as pathogens and parasites, treating without oxygen is especially harmful. It is especially harmful. I sit on 2 medical boards. In earlier videos, I've done the fancy introduction, and I just didn't do it this evening. And one of my least favorite things about sitting on these medical boards is all the comments that come in, all these cases that come in about a negative hyperbaric experience. And we dig a little bit deeper, and it turns out it's not a negative hyperbaric oxygen experience. They never used oxygen. They never breathed what we consider to be oxygen. They didn't use a USP grade of oxygen. And again, when chronic factors are present here, such as parasites and pathogens, these guys love nitrogen. Many of the parasites can harbor bacteria, like Lyme bacteria. It loves the nitrogen. And I've done many cases now, many cases of people that thought they were doing hyperbaric oxygen therapy, but were actually treated with air and made exceptionally worse. If you're doing hyperbaric oxygen and you're not getting better, something is wrong. And that brings me again all the way back around to the case that came in today. And I'm very grateful that the family is willing to consider doing hyperbaric oxygen therapy, because they did 15 sessions. They did 3 weeks of therapy someplace else. The protocol was supposed to only be 4 weeks. So they did 3/4 of the protocol, and not only didn't they make any progress, they're getting worse. And when you're dealing with an infection, when you're dealing with an open wound, when you're dealing with something serious and the person is continuing to get worse, this isn't wellness. This isn't, oh, I'm going to go for a run and I want to see if I get a little performance bounce. This is a person whose organs are failing, and we have a very limited window of time to rebalance the body to get it back into its regenerative cycle. And this is one of the things that oxygen, hyperbaric oxygen, is able to do at very specific clinical dosages. And don't assume that the facility is using oxygen. Because some hyperbaric chambers pressurize with oxygen, it's an exception. In some hospitals, the chamber does fill with oxygen and there is no mask. So they go, oh yeah, it's like that. It's a lie. It's fraud. You're being misled. Whether they are ignorant or greedy, to you as the end user, it's the same result. So there is a big difference. And ultimately, this is a really big reason to choose an ANDI certified hyperbaric facility. This is the reason behind some of the big differences that we do, some of what we offer here. And again, as I've shared, Hyperbarics RX is the first and only holistic hyperbaric center of its kind. And we restore your health naturally, free from side effects. So I would encourage you to please reach out to us today. We would love for you to let us help you. We offer discounted dive packages and personalized dive plans. And again, we're going to help you rebalance your health naturally and restore those regenerative mechanisms. And yes, we're doing clinical hyperbaric dosages, and there really is a big difference. You know, I had a conversation with somebody a few days ago, and I looked at them and I said, if you thought that I could do the same thing with a bag that I can roll up under my arm that weighs 25 pounds instead of these pieces of chamber that weigh thousands of pounds and cost considerably more, along with the infrastructure to support them. If you thought I could do the exact same thing medically, the exact same thing clinically, why wouldn't I do that? All of this equipment, all of this infrastructure, the 3 or 4 chambers that we've upgraded over the last few years, we're continuing to do that just for the heck of it. So please check out our other videos, reach out to us for a consultation. Because it's very hard to hurt somebody with a hyperbaric chamber, a lot of the regulations are not being enforced. Regulation is reactive. So while people aren't outwardly, acutely getting hurt, while there aren't emergencies and fires, there's an awful lot of people that were made worse because an oxygen source was not being used. They bloomed the bugs, they fed the bacteria, they fed the anaerobes. So I hope I gave you something to think about tonight. I hope I gave you some good education. As always, my name is Laura Betts. I am facility director and founder of Hyperbarics RX here down in Fort Lauderdale. Many of you know me as the Oxygen Lady. And as always, it has been great sharing information with you this evening. I look forward to seeing you on another live. And if you are listening to this on the replay, thank you. Thank you. Please reach out to us again. We would love for you to let us help you. Have a great evening.